respect to their descendants and to all Indigenous people. We thank the caretakers of this land who lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We acknowledge that the role that traditional Western-centric planning practices have played in harming, displacing, and attempting to erase Native communities. We commit to being better listeners, learners, and to lifting Indigenous voices. We also commit to identifying racist practices, to practice allyship, and to strive to center restorative land stewardship rather than unsustainable and extractive use of the land. So welcome everyone to our September 12th meeting of the Planning Commission. We are happy to make all commission meetings open to the public. And please note that the Planning Commission does not hold public hearings since the commission is an advisory body. We provide recommendations to elected leaders that in turn make the actual decisions. We encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately to elected officials. This meeting today is a hybrid meeting with some individuals participating remotely while others are participating in person in the boards and commissions room of Seattle City Hall. I would like to move on to our color brave space norms. These are the norms that we have all agreed to in the past to center as we approach our work. And I'd like to invite a fellow commissioner, someone who would like to briefly choose one of these just for us to hold with us in our minds as we approach today's agenda. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer or be voluntold? All right, I have sufficiently waited for volunteers, so I'm going to go off of whose video I see. Michaela, as my fellow co-chair, would you be willing to pick one for us to hold?
Certainly, yes. I think the one that's in green, which is look for learning and commit to learning in public, avoid playing the devil's advocate that upholds white dominant power structures, is the one that resonates with me today. I think I've been struggling with this document we've been working on, and I feel like sometimes I come to meetings and continue to sort of push it, like, what are we doing? Is this what I thought it was going to be? And so I commit to providing that feedback in a way that's constructive and helpful and productive today. So thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. Thanks for modeling learning in public. That's great. If there's no amendments or modifications, just suggesting that we agree to these norms and hold them with us as we approach our agenda today. Speaking of our agenda today, we have two main items, a presentation on ethics considerations for Seattle Planning Commissioners, and a working session on the paper that we are working on in advance of the upcoming budget deliberations at City Council. So with that, we've got an agenda to work through. So I will move us to approving the minutes from our August 8th meeting. Can I ask for a motion to approve the minutes?
Rose motions.
Thank you, Rose. Is there a second?
Second.
Can you say your name so I can?
Oh, I'm sorry. Andy seconds.
Thanks, Andy. Any changes or amendments to the meeting minutes? Great. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions?
I'm gonna abstain just because I wasn't there, if that's
Great.
Appropriate.
Yes. Can you also state your
Oh,
name?
yeah, this is Dylan. Dylan G.
Dylan. Dylan G. Thank you, Dylan. All right, with that, I will move on to our chair's report. So just a quick reminder that our next full commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 26th. That is one of our lovely 7:30 in the morning a.m. meetings from 7:30 to 9. That meeting will also be hybrid format for folks meeting in person in the boards and commissions room in City Hall or online using MS Teams. And then next Thursday, September 19th, is a Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting that is also scheduled from 7:30 to 9. I'm assuming this is a typo, Vanessa, that it is 7:30 to 9, not 7 to 9:30, correct?
It's actually 8 to 9.
Oh, it's 8 to 9.
Not only is it a typo, there's been a change since I wrote this.
I'm glad I asked. All right.
Thank you,
8 to
Jamie.
9.
Sorry about that.
8 to 9 for the record. Next week, 8 to 9 for all our land use and transportation folks. All right. With that, I will pass to Vanessa for commission business and announcement.
Thank you so much, Jamie. As noted before, this is a hybrid meeting. We have a few commissioners here in the room with us at City Hall and others joining us via MS Teams. So I'd like to remind the commissioners to use the chat function to be recognized to speak, but not to enter any substantive comment in the chat, as the chat isn't necessarily visible for members of the public, and we want to make sure our discourse is available to everybody who might be listening in. I will read any public comment emailed to me prior to this meeting. I've received one public comment, so I will read that. I want to reiterate that we invite any members of the public to offer public comment either in person. We don't have anybody in person here today, or by email to me at vanessa.murdoch@seattle.gov. That's on our agendas, and I'd be happy to read your public comment. We do take public comment at the beginning and end of our commission meetings. And before asking Jamie to start the introductions, I would like to welcome 4 new planning commissioners, one of whom is here with us in the room today, Cecilia Black, Dylan Gilsecki, Matt Malloy, and Dylan Stevenson. Matt, unfortunately, is under the weather today, so not joining us. He is our new Get Engaged member. And then also welcome Zio Alvarez to her new position on the commission, having just completed a year as our Get Engaged member. So welcome to our new commissioners. We'll be hearing from our new colleagues during the introductions. After introducing yourself, please call another commissioner to introduce themselves. And if you are having trouble figuring out who's on the call, staff is happy to jump in, and staff will introduce themselves at the conclusion of commissioner introductions. So Jamie, can you please kick us off?
Sounds good. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Strobel. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a commission co-chair with Michaela. And I have been on the commission for several years now and have served on the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. I live in the future 130th station area. Really, really excited for that to eventually open up. And I work in climate change and environmental justice, both doing community organizing and engagement and policy. With that, I will pass it to Michaela, my co-chair.
Thanks, Jamie. Michaela Daffern, she, her pronouns. I live in Capitol Hill. I work in affordable housing policy and planning at King County. And like Jamie, I've been on the commission for a few years. I kind of forget how long, but not as long as Jamie. And I also serve on the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. And I will pass it to Deanna.
Good afternoon. I'm Diana Quintanar. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. I've been serving, Vanessa, I don't know how long I've been serving. 3 years? Or so. And I'm a multimodal transportation planner. Was there anything else we were sharing? I'll pass it over to Andy.
Andy Dannenberg, he, him pronouns, live in Northeast Seattle. I teach at University of Washington. My background's in public health, and I work at the intersection of public health and urban planning at faculty appointments in public health and in urban planning. And so it's kind of exciting to be able to work with the commission for where the future of the city goes from, particularly from the public health perspective. Let's go to one of the Dylans. Which one can answer first?
I can go.
Okay.
This Dylan Glosecki. I use he, him pronouns. Am new to the commission as of a couple weeks ago. Happy to be here. I'm on the Housing Neighborhoods Committee. I live in the Central District, and I work as an architect and urban planner. I will pass it to the other Dylan.
Hi everyone, I'm Dylan Stevenson. I'm an assistant professor in urban design and planning at University of Washington. A lot of my work is in indigenous planning, and so looking at culture and land ethics and relationships and things of that sort. I live in the Belltown neighborhood, he, they pronouns, and similarly, I've been serving for a couple weeks since I'm also new, so thank you for having me. And for the next person, I'll choose Rose.
Hi folks, I'm Rose Luchello Whitson, pronouns they, them. I live up north in the weird part of Licton Springs that is now technically Northgate due to planning redistricting. And yeah, my background, I'm a professional wetland scientist and environmental permitting specialist, currently working for Jacobs Engineering for my day job. And I've been with the commission for the same amount of time as Deanna, I believe so, in that 3-year time frame. And I'm on the Land Use and Transportation Subcommittee. Okay, with that, I'll pass it to Cecilia.
Maybe seen on the general, on the big eye up there.
Don't worry about this camera. Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Cecilia, she, her pronouns. I'm one of the new commissioners. I live in the Roosevelt neighborhood, like 2 blocks from the light rail. And I work at Disabilities Washington as a community organizer and organize people with disabilities and non-drivers on transportation issues and accessible housing. And I'm on the Transportation and Land Use Subcommittee. And I will pass to Nick.
Hello, Nick Whipple. I use he, him pronouns. I live in West Seattle in the North Del Ridge neighborhood. For my day job, I'm a city planner on the east side. For the commission, I serve on the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. And I am just over, I think, a year now on the Planning Commission. How about Zio? Thanks.
Hi all, Zio Alvarez, she, they pronouns. I live in White Center Highland Park, and I'm an urban and architectural designer, currently with Element Architects, which is downtown. And I have an appointment on the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. And I was the Get Engaged member, as was previously mentioned, so I'm just over a year on the commission. Caleb.
Hi everyone, my name is Caleb Tolde, he, him pronouns. I live in Beacon Hill now, and then I also was a Get Engaged member, and I think that was back in 2021 or 2022, I can't remember. And then I am one of the co-chairs for the Land Use and Transportation Committee, and I work in education at Rainier Scholars. I will pass it on to...
I think we're on to staff now.
Staff? Sweet. I'll pass it off to staff.
I'll start. Hey everyone, Olivia Baker. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm staff to the Planning Commission. John?
Hi, everybody. I'm John Hoy, staff to the Planning Commission and lead staff for the Land Use and Transportation Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll wrap this up. My name is Vanessa Murdoch. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also staff to the commission, and I'm so thankful for all of your participation today. And with that, I will turn it back to Jamie, who is chairing the meeting.
Well, really excited that we have so many new commissioners, and congrats, Zio, on getting a more permanent term. Really excited to have you all here, and we will definitely build in more time to get to know all the commissioners as we hopefully plan a retreat soon. Hint, hint, Vanessa. And we also can plan a social hour at some point, but hope to get to know a lot of you better. I will move on to public comment. So the commission provides time for public comment at all of our meetings. And a reminder that we do not hold public hearings and are an advisory body. We make recommendations to elected leaders. I already said this earlier. We're just reiterating it. The elected leaders actually make the decisions. So individuals who make comments to the commission should remember that the mayor and the city council make the decisions. And we encourage you to provide your comments appropriately to those elected officials. And we'll invite individuals from the audience, or for those who emailed Vanessa in advance, to offer a public comment at this point. And we limit to comments to 2 minutes each. So Vanessa, I will pass to you.
Thank you, Jamie. I'll read the one public comment I've received. Dear Commissioners, as stewards of Seattle's development planning, please review and comment on Council Bill 120824. The bill eliminates design review in the center city for 3 years, during which time SDCI can grant waivers and departures outside current zoning code that cannot be appealed. The bill is drafted to automatically approve bigger buildings without respect to code and without public input and oversight. It conflicts with city and state laws and disregards cautions by city staff and the auditor about potential ethical breaches. Among the conflicts include: the bill preempts state law that defined and mandated a streamlined design review process compulsory across Washington in 2025. It will deny 100,000 Seattleites the right to participate in this process for 3 years. The bill also eliminates SEPA review for large mixed-use and residential towers because a previous ordinance was approved with provision environmental review of height, bulk, and scale would now occur as part of design review. After years of stakeholder engagement, the bill rejects the city's design review SLI report, finding that Seattle's design review is valuable and should not be eliminated. Then there are the ethical considerations. A central staff report notes this legislation has no protection against abuse of discretion provided by public visibility into the decision-making process. That can be found on page 7. The concern is real. Last year, a city auditor report stated about 30% of the SDCI employees we interviewed commented on the ethical environment of the department, including the city being influenced to make permit process changes by and for big developers. That would be page 10. Finally, the legislation scope is undefined. Staff don't know if projects currently in design review or recently completed can simply withdraw and submit new plans for waivers and departures. In summary, Seattle's land use policies and actions should be above reproach. The state has provided a streamlined design review mandate that keeps the public involved. Please speak up for a public process that preserves integrity, transparency, and fairness in land use decisions. Thank you for your consideration. Megan Cruz, District 7 resident. That concludes our public comment.
Thank you, Vanessa. We'll move on to our first speaker. We are a little bit behind schedule, so we're hoping that, sorry, thank you for your patience, Wayne. So we have a guest speaker, Wayne Barnett, the Executive Director of the Seattle Ethics and Elections Commission, who is joining us to provide an overview of ethics consideration for Seattle Planning Commissioners. We have 45 minutes on this for this agenda item. So thank you, Wayne, and thank you for taking time to come speak to us and for your patience as we were running a little behind.
Oh, you're very welcome, Jamie. I'm going to do everything I can to get you back on schedule. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but I guarantee you and I will finish before 4. So hope I can guarantee that. Ethics considerations, we really just do 3 things. I know it sounds like we do a lot. You listen to the public comment, you'd think we had many things had ethical components to them, but really ethics code really just deals with 3 things. First, conflicts of interest. Second, abuse of position, and 3, misleading or abusive gifts. So that's it. That's all we do. We just monitor those 3 things, make sure those aren't going on. And so let me just start with conflicts of interest. That's probably the big one. I think the Ethics Commission got into it with the Planning Commission, what, like 10 or 15 years ago. Remember, there was a huge thing over whether or not, I think it was an article by Bob Young at the Seattle Times reporting on some recommendations made by the Planning Commission to the mayor on the development downtown. And what Bob did was he went and he looked at every planning commissioner and their relations to the downtown development community. And like one was a lobbyist for Al Cleese. Another was an employee of Al Cleese, and on with that. So that was a dark chapter for us, but I think it's led to good things though in the end. Because now, obviously we have a very lovely planning commission. It's wonderful to hear all your members, a lot of diversity. So I think the key thing is though, like, so now you only have a conflict of interest that bars you from participating if you yourself have a financial interest in the matter. You yourself have a financial interest in the matter. So I'm not aware of any of those. I've not heard of them in recent times, but that's the only thing you have to recuse yourself on. If you just have an appearance of a conflict, that would be something you would solve through disclosure. And I think that's a wonderful thing the Planning Commission does, is you have these disclosures, you make them at the meetings, and Robin transmits them to me every quarter. They're lovely. And all we're really doing now is we're kind of like incentivizing good behavior. So if you're going to make a recommendation that's going to benefit your employer or your interests, all you have to do is disclose that. And then it comes to me through that. And then it's all part of the public record. I think that's a key thing. We're really just trying to make sure the public is well served by your actions. So that's a great thing. That's conflicts. The other thing we do is abuse of position. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm speaking too quickly. I'm going to try to slow down.
No, you're fine.
These things are very strange, because ever since the pandemic, I'm just trying to get back in the swing of things, and I really just can't seem to do it. It's great.
And we don't have
I know,
snacks
yeah.
or refreshments,
Right,
so.
yeah. No, it's fine. It's just kind of like, noting the effect of the pandemic continues. So yeah. Abusive position, that's where you were to use your position in some way to forward your own interests. So if you in some way, I think that deals most for you and your relations with staff and SDCI and the OPCD. Sorry, I had to think there. Just make sure you're not throwing around your weight in any way that's improper. So, you can't, please don't call Vanessa and say like, hey, Vanessa, I'm applying for a job. Can you write me a recommendation or something like that? That would be kind of a strange thing. So I don't know what I would do with that. So that's a great thing, to just make sure you're only using your position for the purposes for which you're given it, to give advice to elected officials on things that deal with development. So that's a good thing. I think another thing is political stuff. Please just make sure you're not throwing around your position in any endorsements or anything you're going to be doing here on out. Because like I said, the elections code bars you from doing that, bars us all from doing that. So I think you just have to make sure you're not in any way trying to promote your agenda in any way where you're involving your commissionhood. So like if you're going to be listed as a endorser for somebody, please don't endorse as like Dylan Stevenson, comma, Seattle Planning Commissioner. Just Dylan Stevenson. You're yourself, and that's a good thing. I also know did you do the transportation levy? Were you at the which was great. I mean, that's like, but I love that you didn't mention we're ready to be a planning commissioner, because that's where you got to just be careful of that stuff. Yeah. The other thing we deal with is gifts. So that's where somebody is giving you something, and it might look to the public like there's a connection between that and what you're doing here. So like if you're looking at height changes for downtown buildings, please don't have like a big downtown property owner taking you to dinner or offering like that. That would just be not right. So that's, if anybody offers you something, you're like, wow, why am I getting this thing? If you think it might be because you're a planning commissioner, you probably shouldn't be taking it. So that's a good thing. I think that's really, like I said, that's the code. It's really not that big. Like I said, the public comment there sounds like we do everything, but we really don't. We're not that big an octopus. Our tentacles don't go that far. So yeah. Anybody have any questions? I should give you all a chance to ask me questions now. So. Nope.
Vanessa, you have your hand up.
I put my hand up.
Oh.
Just thank you so
No,
much.
you're
And
welcome.
I thought I would offer a couple of examples.
Yes.
Because that might help current commissioners as well as members of the public
Right.
listening in.
Yeah.
How does this actually work out?
Yeah.
So when I first started 10 and a half years ago in this position, the Planning Commission was reviewing the extension of the Burt Gilman Trail.
Right.
And one of the commissioners at the time happened to be representing one of the parties in an appeal to the Burt Gilman Trail. And this individual owned his own, or was a partner in a law firm.
Right.
And he and I spoke before, and I said, I think it would be wise for you to recuse yourself from this discussion and state why.
Right.
So before we even started to talk about it, this commissioner said, I'm recusing myself from this conversation because I am the lawyer representing an appellant to the SEPA determination on the proposed Burt Gilman extension. And as such, I will stand up and leave the room. And he
Right.
left the room. So that's one example. Another example, another former commissioner worked for a transportation firm and was a consultant to the pedestrian master plan, which was being developed in the Seattle Department of Transportation. This commissioner did not have a financial stake, did not have an ownership position at the firm at the time that was working as a consultant to SDOT on the pedestrian master plan. However, she and I spoke before and we just decided she would disclose that.
Right.
She didn't leave the room, but she did not participate. Understandably, because the people who were presenting to us were SDOT staff and also her clients. So that was awkward.
Right.
But everybody talked about it before and just determined she did not need to leave the room, but it would be most appropriate and comfortable for everybody if she just did not participate in the discussion. So those are two examples. I will note that anytime I see something coming up on the agenda where I think it would be prudent to recuse, for a commissioner to recuse themselves, or even to disclose, I will contact that commissioner in advance of the meeting. So you don't have to be looking at the agenda 5 minutes before the meeting starts and think, oh gosh, what do I need to do? And then I'll also note that Wayne has been incredibly generous and approachable with his time. Anytime I have a question where I'm like, I'm not sure, I will reach out to Wayne, and Wayne is very responsive in offering his advice to me that I can then pass on to the rest of the commission.
Right. Well, thank you. And I'd be happy to give any of you advice if you were to call me either. So do know you can reach out to me. Start with Vanessa and reach out to me. All right. Wow. I give up the balance of my time.
Just a reminder to folks, especially because we have new commissioners, we use a process where if you can put your name into the chat if you have a question or you want to make a comment, and then Vanessa and I kind of moderate from there. Or in this instance, I think you could use the raise hand function, though we know that Teams is a little wonky, so sometimes that option isn't always available for folks. So we'll be primarily using the chat. Anyone else have any questions or things for Wayne? I think the key takeaway is often, if in doubt, ask Vanessa, and then Vanessa will check with Wayne, and then we'll come back with an answer. And usually there's an opportunity to if there's some semblance or if we're worried, it's always better to just mention it so that we're being transparent. Vanessa, your hand is raised again. Go ahead.
I'm just very handsy today. Dylan, I see in the comments that Dylan G has a question.
Yeah, so I had a question regarding, you mentioned advocacy, and I do a lot of volunteer work with American Institute of Architects Seattle chapter. We do a lot of advocacy around various issues related to the built environment. And so I just want to make sure what I'm understanding is that there's no need to curb that work. It's just a matter of if we were to submit a letter as American Institute of Architects Seattle, I need to be associated with that group and to drop any associations with the Planning Commission. Or are there
Yes.
specific sort of advocacy issues that we need to be aware of and review with you or Vanessa?
I think the only advocacy issues you need to be aware of is if it's dealing with a city ballot measure or city candidate. That's where your advocacy might actually run into trouble. So just make sure if you do that, just make sure you check with me. All I'm going to tell you is like, please don't use city time or any of your resources that are as a planning commissioner to do it.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's nothing about your activities outside of the sphere of the planning commission are ever going to be my business. So.
Got it. Okay. So if it's like the public developer work that's happening, anything around that may go to ballot, that's something that I should just check in with Vanessa on before
Right.
being associated with. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Dylan. This is Vanessa speaking. I would just add to that answer, not related to compliance with the our ethics plan that we have with the Ethics and Elections Commission, but rather just any commissioners doing advocacy work outside of the commission. I really appreciate if you check in with me, just so A, I'm aware of it, and B, we can just talk through so that you can make it very clear when you are working on any kind of issue outside of the Planning Commission, but that may actually overlap with work that the Planning Commission does, that you make it really clear what hat you're wearing at the time you're speaking about an issue, so that we are really clear so that people don't get different affiliations conflated. And that's one of the reasons why, per our bylaws, we actually are intentional in having our co-chairs, currently being Jamie Strobel and Michaela Daffern, as the spokespeople for the commission. That is so that we are consistent in the message of the commission and not at risk of offering personal opinions, which are completely valid and fine, but we want to be very sure that personal opinions do not get conflated with that of the commission. And any time that there is a statement made on behalf of the Seattle Planning Commission, that it truly reflects the diversity of the body of all commissioners.
Yeah, I think so some of the things we've run into in the past, Vanessa gave a couple of examples. Some other examples are somebody was working on the big, their company was working on the big Seattle transportation plan. And so just being able to say like, my organization or my company is working on this, although I might not be assigned to that project, or if you are, being able to say that, right? And then we've also had things where you're being asked to speak on something, whether like separately outside of the commission. And if someone mentions like, hey, I know you're on the Planning Commission, being really clear about, I am not speaking on behalf of the commission. Like yes, I am on the commission, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission unless you've gotten explicit prior approval from Vanessa that you are speaking on behalf of the commission. In which case we would want to make sure that we have, talking points that are consistent with the body of work that we have put out. And this is just mainly so that we don't end up contradicting ourselves and we stay consistent in how we have been presenting ourselves on certain issues. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Vanessa.
I think you covered it. Thank
Yes.
you. I do see that Rose has an example of a disclosure that she is offering to share that might be helpful.
Yeah. So Rose, they, them. So my example, since I work for a private consulting firm that does business with the city, we as a commission historically have taken strong interest, for example, in sound transit work or work that Seattle Department of Transportation does. And so anytime there's a perceived conflict of interest, whether it's because my company holds contracts to do, like West Seattle Link or Ballard Link extension, I make it clear that I am not involved with that project. I'm actually firewalled, but I disclose it just to prevent any sort of indication of, conflict of interest. Or like anytime I work on a Seattle Department of Transportation project, I always let Vanessa know. And then if it's appropriate, I'll disclose in meetings.
I love this, by the way. Can I just say this is wonderful?
We try.
Yes. Michaela, did you have something to add?
I was just going to add on top of what Jamie and Rose have already said. I always want to follow the rules. And so when in doubt, ask. We are so lucky to have Wayne, and we're so lucky to have staff at the commission. And I have gotten really clear and easy to understand answers about how to deal with my particular situation. And then just remember that it's not always an actual conflict of interest, but even the perception of a conflict of interest. So also, when in doubt, disclose, even if you think it's silly or not really something that you should be disclosing. So we have people at the City Hall who are here to help us be ethical in the way we do our work, and we're really lucky to have them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. Anyone else have questions, comments for Wayne? Okay. Wayne, did you have anything else you wanted to share with us?
I think I could do a song and dance.
There's an ethics dance.
Refreshments next time, I
Exactly.
promise. That will warrant song and dance.
I think I'm all done. Thank you. And please just reach out to me at any time.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we are back on schedule and now actually ahead of schedule.
Right. Sorry.
So we are moving into our work session next. Planning Commission staff are going to walk us through a draft paper to help inform the upcoming City Council deliberations of the mayor's proposed budget. This paper has been developed and discussed over the past 2 months. And the intent of the paper is to inform members of the public and provide suggestions on how to become involved in the budget process. The development of this piece has been iterative and may not reflect comments made earlier in the process, as the intent and audiences continue to evolve and shift and change over the course of several meetings, particularly in the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. In the interest of finalizing a document in a timely manner so as to inform the budget, the staff is suggesting that we do a discussion today that does not introduce any new content or take the paper in a different direction, but definitely want to be hearing your feedback. So we have an hour for this work session, and I will hand it over to Olivia.
All right, thanks, Jamie. So yeah, my plan for this afternoon is to give you all sort of a little bit more context and then an overview of the draft that you all should have received last Friday. And I think Vanessa also just sent it out again ahead of the meeting, so it's at the top of your inbox. I'm hoping you all had the chance to read through it and kind of, give it a good once over and form some opinions. But I'm hoping that if you didn't get the chance to do that, between my overview and then a 5-minute read through that we're going to have after that, you'll have the chance to either refresh your memory or read it quickly. And then we'll jump into a discussion. So just to start off with a little bit of timeline and context, as Jamie mentioned, we started this, I think, back in July, maybe even a little bit before that, with discussions mostly in Executive Committee and the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. And a lot of the bulk of like the work and discussion on this paper has happened in the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee, but we did all take a look at a detailed outline at the August 8th full commission meeting. And, kind of went in a slightly different direction at that time. And then a full draft was reviewed at the September Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. And we really sort of got into some of the details of the paper there, and it was decided that we should really narrow it and focus. And so we've actually cut quite a bit of content for the draft that you've seen today. It's quite a bit shorter. And the goal was really to kind of to narrow the message so that it was really clear and sort of digestible for the public. So I'll get into the goal and the audience a little bit more in a minute. But just for context of our overall timeline, today we're looking at this draft text. We're expecting that the mayor's proposed budget will be released to the public on September 24th. And we're hoping to review essentially a final draft of this paper at the next full commission meeting on September 26th, with the hope of publishing the week of September 30th. So sort of a quick turnaround after that point. And the goal is to get it out the door so that it's available to the public as council deliberates and public comment occurs throughout October and early November, because they wrap up the budget process by Thanksgiving. So kind of only have 2 months after September for this whole process to take place. So as you can see, we're coming to the end of our time to work on this paper, and hence the note of our direction from staff to try to definitely give us your feedback on the content. If there's something that concerns you, we want to hear that. If there's specific text that you think needs to be changed, but we're trying to avoid a redirect at this point, just because we really need to get it out the door. Moving on, Jamie already touched on this, but I just wanted to reiterate at the last Housing Neighborhoods Committee, we really sort of focused in on the goal. So the goal is to help more people understand the importance of the annual budget process and how it relates to long-range planning, like the comprehensive plan and Seattle Transportation Plan, and to encourage people to get involved in the budget process this year, because decisions made this year in the budget impact those important long-range visions and planning documents that the commission so often talks about. And the audience specifically is members of the public who are interested in these things like the comprehensive plan. Maybe they've been following that process, or they're really concerned about the affordable housing crisis, but they haven't been involved in the budget process in the past. So this paper is trying to make that connection for them, right? Like you're concerned about these issues, and the budget is where a lot of those issues, sort of the rubber meets the road on those. So that's the main goal and audience. Looking at the actual draft text of the paper, and again, I'll give you 5 minutes to really read through it after I go through this, but just at a high level, it starts out now with a call to action, right? So the goal is right off the top to say, the commission wants folks to get involved in this year's budget process. And then it goes into the why, which centers around, the commission is concerned about housing affordability, displacement and livability in the city, and thinks, the public should be interested in that too, because it impacts everyone. And the city budget is where the solutions that the commission has been advocating for, such as in the comprehensive plan, really receives the resources to be implemented. So we need to invest in the vision. And then it shifts to kind of making that connection a little more clear for folks between how the budget impacts the long-term vision that's put forward in the comprehensive plan. And thank you to a couple of your peers who sent in sort of consolidated list of key points that they wanted to make sure it covered after the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. We asked, if anyone had points they really thought needed to fit into this as we sort of cut it down to bare bones, please send those, and a couple of folks did. So thank you for that. And those are reflected either here or in the body of the paper. So this section touches on, it's just really important to start implementing the 20-year comprehensive plan vision this year. Start now, not next year, not in a few years, but start off on the right foot by funding the programs and departments that will be able to implement that vision this year. Touches on how affordable housing is really fundamental to the vision that's put forth in the comprehensive plan. It notes that community outreach has consistently over time shown a general desire for abundant affordable housing in the city, and that message has been repeated over and over. And then it also notes that a commitment to preventing displacement in Seattle really requires consistent, sustained investment over multiple budget years. So that's, sort of we're waiting, we're just getting started. Don't pull back now, essentially, on the funding and the work there. Then moving on to the next section, the paper moves into a little bit more detail about, the housing affordability crisis in Seattle and what's at stake. Not a ton of detail because we wanted to cut back and make it digestible. So it starts off with a graphic created by Zio. Thank you, Zio. That talks about the gap in housing between the number of homes that we have in Seattle and the number that we need. And the graphic does a really good job of showing that, even though, or not only are we in need of at least 112,000 new homes by 2044, but well over half, more than 60% of those need to be affordable to households making between 0 and 80% AMI. And just noting that, the market will not produce those units on its own. It will require government subsidy. And then there's a section that talks about how the gap in the housing supply is related to a lot of other negative outcomes like displacement and like homelessness and high rates of housing cost burden. And it describes how this is an issue that compounds over time, and it particularly impacts people of color and low-income households. So it's something that needs to be addressed rather than allowing it to continue to grow or to get worse. It then moves into talk about the budget more directly, touches on how city leadership is looking at a large budget deficit this year of around $260 million. And it notes that funding for affordable housing and displacement were intentionally increased in recent years to address decades of underinvestment. And so, that was done with purpose. That was done for a reason. But now those funds are under scrutiny because they increased so much recently. And you'll see in the draft that there's a comment there, both on the dollar amount and just on that language, that it can be adjusted once the budget comes out. Just we aren't quite sure what will be in the draft budget, so we're leaving a little wiggle room there if we need to. Then, the section sort of closes with comments that are touching on how, what the city actually needs to do. So we need to continue to support all the programs and departments that are working on this puzzle of affordable housing and affordability in the city. And it notes the type of work that those programs and departments do, but it doesn't note any specific programs, which is intentional, as we've discussed in past meetings. And it touches on how, this large scale investment in affordable housing and equitable development strategies is a sort of a new project for the city, right? It's only in recent years that this much funding has been invested in affordable housing and that programs like EDI have started. And so those programs need time to grow and mature and meet their full potential. So the city needs to continue to support those. So that finishes up that section. And then the paper just finishes with a section on how to get involved, which will be linked down from the top as well. If people are sort of like, here, read the call to action, just want to get right to the how to get involved part, they can jump down to this section. And so this section just says, get involved by following the city budget process, speak up for programs that support the work of affordable housing and community-led anti-displacement projects. It will have a link to the proposed budget once it's released. And then it tells folks how to get in contact with city council if they actually want to get involved in the process. So that's the draft. And I should note that I did a test run and layout. It wasn't fancy, but just to get a sense of how it would fit on a more well-organized page than a Word document. And it's about 2.5 pages if you leave room for some good white space and some spacing. So I think that is fairly brief. That's probably as short as we can expect it to be. But just keep that in mind as you look at this. It's not the 4 pages that you see on a Word document. Yeah, so are there any questions on what I just shared? If not, we can move into the 5-minute review before we do discussion.
Kayla, go ahead. Are you?
I
Is
did
that
not raise my
earlier?
hand. I was like getting a notepad to take notes while I read.
Vanessa, I'm going to ask you to help me with the queue because my chat won't load until I've typed something in. It's very bizarre. So it won't show me any messages until otherwise I'm going to periodically just put random messages in the chat so it updates. So just so you all know.
You can just give us a smiley face every now and then, Jamie, and we'll know why.
Every once in a while. That's my check-in. Okay.
Jamie, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to suggest that we take 5 minutes to review the letter. And because we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, to also take a 5-minute break. So you have 10 minutes total to either deep dive into the letter because you're like, I just want to spend all that time reading, or spending at least half the time reviewing and the other half taking a little break. So that means you have until 4:07. Well, okay, 8 now. Just changed to 4:08 to be able to review the letter. See you all in 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Sound check.
We can hear you.
Great.
Is that Matt?
I have nothing to say.
Hey, Matt.
Okay, it is 4:08, so I invite you to come back on camera if you're joining us virtually. And it looks like our in-person folks are sitting around the table ready to go.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think we'll just open it up for discussion. Love to hear general thoughts, specific language that you are concerned about or really want to see added, questions, concerns, confusion, anything is fair game. And as Jamie noted, go ahead and put your name in the queue in the chat.
You got it, okay.
That's the one thing I have. Right now.
I can also pull up specific text
Teams meeting, so.
if that's helpful for people. I can put the paper on the screen.
That'd be great, Olivia, if we can do that.
No thoughts so far. Don't take our disclaimer to not change direction too seriously.
Right.
Definitely still want input on this draft.
I was gonna ask about that. We've got two folks
Can you see?
queue
Okay, yeah.
already. That's why I put the checking queue chat so I could see that. So I'm just gonna keep doing that periodically. Michaela, you're up first.
Olivia, you did it. It's it. This is I think landed. You've landed the ship. You've landed the plane. Good job. It's short. It conveys a message that's understandable, and it's like besides a couple of things, I think in like evocative and more layperson terms. So thank you so much for wading through all of our feedback that we gave you and finally finding a message. And appreciate my fellow housing and neighborhoods committee members who I saw some of the bullet points that they forwarded on to you, and I felt like we were heading in a good direction. Procedurally, I work in housing, so I have like a lot of little comments on wording and stuff. For this work session today, do you want us to like not get into that detail and email that to you after the meeting?
Yeah, I think we'll see how it goes. If there's no
Okay.
more comments in 10 minutes, then feel free to just start getting into that. But
Okay.
if we're opening up more lines of talk, then yeah, you could just go ahead and email those to me.
Okay. Then I will mute myself while I wade through my comments to see if any of them are worthy of bringing up today.
Okay. We have Rose and then Dylan and Deanna. So let's go, Rose.
I'm going to see it because I get the sense other commissioners have questions or comments about content, and mine is all like, let's make this shorter. Here are some suggestions.
Okay, we will wait on that. How about Dylan G?
Yeah, so acknowledging that I am joining this collaboration a bit late, and you guys have been working on this for months, I believe. But question regarding linking this back to kind of root causes of public safety, homelessness. I know we want to be sensitive about how we make these linkages, but at the same time, those are kind of issues of the day that a lot of folks see those words and all of a sudden they're drawn in terms of getting public feedback, getting the public engaged. You bring up public safety and all of a sudden everybody seems to pay attention for a second. grab their eye. And again, I don't want to take us down any rabbit holes or introduce new topics, but I'm curious if that has come up in past conversations, and if there is, if it makes sense to link back to that, or if that's reaching a bit too far with what we're trying to do with this paper.
I can touch base on that a little bit, but I'm wondering if other commissioners have thoughts as well. I guess my question, just as a follow-up, Dylan, if others are interested in also including this, is I think we touch on it a little bit, but it's, it's further down. It's not at the top of the paper. Right. This paragraph here sort of goes into how the gap in the housing supply is related to these negative outcomes.
Oh, yeah.
So my question would be, do you want to add language to that particular section, or do you think it should be bumped up? How would you want it to show up in the paper?
I would just say no, I didn't catch that homelessness mentioned there, so that's solid. And I guess I'm just wondering on I don't know, is public safety too much of a reach? And the only reason I'm bringing it up is just because it does grab folks' attention. And in light of that, do we want to at least mention homelessness earlier on in the initial sort of attention grab at the top of the page? Just Michaela pointed out at our last meeting, and she's right that attention spans are so short. We want to try and grab attention as quickly as we can, and again, using these sort of resorting to media buzzwords does help in that respect. So curious if there's a way to at least weave homelessness into that initial 2 paragraphs.
How do you want to manage responses to Dylan versus moving on to folks who are lined up in the chat?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that. Does anyone have a particular response to that issue before we move on to the next person? I see Diana and then Michaela, and then I also have a comment.
Well, maybe just to clarify from Dylan, I know how I felt the first day in an actual commission, and you're getting to jump right into where there's already a document that you weren't necessarily a part of the discussions to kind of have weighed in at a different time. I just wanted to understand is what you're trying to make a linkage of is in terms of public safety, is it in terms of the investment in public safety, which I think would be maybe not necessarily something we want to directly make a link to, but I guess what I'm trying to understand is it just making sure that we mention that it affects public safety, or draw a more specific link to how we're investing in public safety versus how we're investing in housing?
As we're talking about it, I think that the mention of homelessness is adequate, and I'm actually thinking more on it. And as we're talking about it out loud, I thought about mentioning public safety and homelessness because they're both kind of big issues of the day, but I don't like mentioning them in the same sentence. I don't think that's appropriate. So I'm going to withdraw the comment about public safety. I think homelessness is adequate. And the reason that I do bring it up is just to try to make a linkage back to something that is going to get people's attention. That's what I'm trying to just kind of emphasize. And I don't like the idea of linking homelessness to public safety. So I'm going to withdraw that point. I think homelessness as a term is adequate for inclusion in this in the document.
Thanks, Dylan. We actually had an active discussion around that at the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee. So you ended up landing where we landed too. Michaela, did you want to respond to that as well? Looks like you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I was going to respond to that, to your suggestion, Dylan, of maybe this isn't like in the right order in the letter too, because I agree with you, like that is actually a really powerful paragraph, and I wonder if we move that towards the beginning before the bullet points. That would be my Obviously, Olivia, your discretion around flow, but I wonder if we can get that on the first page somehow.
And it almost makes a good call out box on its own, but.
And I just want to be clear, this is Vanessa, sorry to jump the queue and everything else, but the paragraph that you're referring to, Jamie, is as city leadership builds a budget for 2025.
No, the gap in the housing.
The gap in the housing supply is directly related to negative outcomes in like displacement, homelessness, and high rates of housing cost burden in Seattle.
Thank you.
I mean, it's almost making the point that $1 spent on housing is $1 spent on all these different policies. You know, it's kind of the argument that we make in transportation that $1 spent in safe bicycle facilities is $1 spent in, you know, reducing, in the healthcare system, like, because people go to the hospital afterwards, right? And so that costs money. All that kind of message might be what we were trying to convey here, is that they're associated. So investing in housing is also investing in these elements. So that, yeah, it's there.
Yeah, I'm wondering if folks feel like this sentence up in the bullet points covers it, or if we want to make it more punchy, more clear, or if a pop-out box like Diana suggested is preferable. If you see this last sentence in the second bullet point kind of covers it, but maybe we can make it better language then.
I'm seeing from Rose in the chat that making it a pop-out or putting in for that paragraph earlier up makes sense. I honestly did not read that sentence in the bullet point in the same way that I read that other paragraph. So to me, it gets kind of lost, especially because if you're skim reading something, you only read like the first few sentences or words of a bullet point. So I think the more that we can emphasize it, it's probably better. Okay. Any other comments on that, on this one particular issue before we keep going in the queue?
I guess conclusion, we're figuring out a way to pop that out and link the fact that it is associated to all these topics, and investing in that is investing in all these issues somehow.
Yep.
Okay.
I like your $1 spent is $1 in this. That's very catchy, Deanna.
I know. It has worked for me in my entire career to make the case for funding for the kinds of projects I work in. Yeah. Same with public space, stuff like that.
All right. Well, you are up next in the queue, so don't.
Well, there you go. Mine was related to the pie chart, Olivia, if you want to go to the 6% pie chart.
Yes, sorry, computer issues. Here we go. And sorry, the graphics blurry in this.
No, it's okay. Understandable. I was curious if we had any hesitation in kind of saying 6% and on the side $ X million, right? Like just to kind of in a one glance understand how much budget is 6% versus how much is 94%. Because I don't know that it's clear. I mean, I guess it says below. Do we know what the 6% is without having to go to a link to the budget?
It's not in the document, no.
So I was wondering if commissioners, had any hesitation in just kind of calling out what 6% is in dollars, just in bulk, right? Like the at 1.x million or something like that. To kind of have a sense of the magnitude, right? And this is because someone like me whose brain always works in indicators, right? I wanted to really quickly get a sense of like, oh, okay, so if that 6% is 10 million, right? And there's 700,000 residents of Seattle, right? How much are we spending in housing affordability per capita, right? Like I like knowing those kinds of things because they do say, well, per resident, how much are we investing? Knowing that they don't fall within it, but I could actually figure out of the 700,000, anticipated residents, right? Like that would fall within the AMI bracket we're, focused on. how much are we spending on that population per capita? Like it's I think a valuable or interesting way of looking at it. So again, not trying to add other comparisons and things, but just by stating what the 6% amounted to in dollars would be helpful, but defer to, of course, the full body to weigh in.
We did have an active discussion about this too in housing and neighborhoods. Zio, you have a response to Deanna?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna mention that we talked about this in the last housing and neighborhoods meeting, and one of the ways that we were thinking about attempting to kind of like keep this document narrow and focused is that well, not even that. I think we're just concerned that looking at the dollar amount of money that's spent on affordable housing now might intimidate people, and starting to assign dollar amounts to what is needed might discourage people from participating or from advocating if they're not kind of already budget wonks or already sort of aware of the scale of spending. And so I think something we talked about in an early life of this document was like including a lot of links out to other sources. And so I'm wondering if what you're talking about, Deanna, could be done by connecting sort of the readers of this document to other reports that do similar things. I know Olivia's already got the Seattle Open Budget book here, but if we have reporting on like per capita spending, I just don't know that we want to make, I think this document wants to be as approachable as possible to a general user, and I'm worried that sort of getting that deep into numbers might start to intimidate.
Well, we are getting deep into numbers. We're giving a 6%. And, you know, in saying how do we calculate 6%, right? A number, you know, we say a number of affordable housing programs. How do I know which ones were considered there or not, right? And so maybe we don't need to do that, and just by making sure that it's understood what kind of that amount is. I get the sensitivity, but then I would say, in my professional experience, when I write a report and I can't source a number, right, directly, or make it evident for the reader to understand where this number came from, because me clicking on the budget book is not going to easily tell me how the Planning Commission assigned 6% of the cost to that, unless they just added everything assigned to the Office of Housing. And if that is the case, and we're just saying this corresponds, 6% is the budget for the Office of Housing overall, right? And if that's the case we want to make, maybe that's simpler. Say Office of Housing only receives this much, you know, and of course that includes administrative costs and all other kinds of things. But if we actually took the time to decide which programs account for 6%, right, and it excludes the administrative costs, it just feels like we're not being fully transparent. But
just sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Deanna. I know there's a couple other folks who want to comment on this too, so I want to make sure that we have, it might actually answer some of the questions you're asking. One of them is that in the label itself, if you notice, it actually does list which programs that 6% is composed of. So multifamily lending program, home ownership, weatherization, also Regional Homeless Authority, Human Services, Equitable Development Initiative. This is all aggregated into one. So the other consideration in here is around, you know, this is a bunch of different programs that are kind of lumped together within that. So we went back and forth within the committee about like, does that make sense to like put one number when actually it's representative of a lot of different programs? And instead, maybe we link to a place where the folks can actually dig in deeper into the numbers themselves if they want to, which is, I think, the link that's there. And then I know Cecilia, you have a comment particularly on this pie chart, so I want to go to you next.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo. Well, I'll say I come from like advocacy, and so I know that we're also like talked about being intentional about not trying to advocate for something that's unintentionally taking funding away from other programs that are also important, but outside of housing. So, but I also work a lot on solidarity budget advocacy, and like the way we rally people is with numbers. That is like, it gives people context. And I think that even just like, I work on the budgets all the time, and I can't even tell you what the Seattle annual operating budget number is. And when we say that we need, I like the caption that we need $30.4 billion by 2044. I think that's really helpful. And I like that it says that can't all come from the operating budget, but it means nothing to me because there's no numbers attached to the operating budget of the 6%. So I think that it's pretty important to have like some number there to give context to this, like this caption. Yeah, and I guess another comment, not related, but not about this pie chart. And I don't have a good comment, but I don't have like a good solution. But I think like I think like the most powerful paragraph to me that really is like calls people to action is this one about the budget gap, and just that the city is going to have to be considering a lot of options of how to accommodate that. And I just think that is like a really compelling reason for people to get involved in the budget and advocate for what they think is most important. But it is kind of feels, I don't know, buried a little bit.
Olivia, do we know what the total numbers are for that 94% and 6%?
I have them. I don't want to attempt to say them right now because I might screw them up. They're all in an Excel spreadsheet. But yeah,
Okay.
I do have those.
Okay. Are there any further comments on the pie chart? It sounds like what I'm hearing is that folks are pro including actual budget numbers, but we're not really sure the best way to present that. And I think the other thing we were considering in housing and neighborhoods was, I don't, that's why I asked what the actual numbers are, because what happens if that is like a $258 million number and it just fits with like what the city, like we also don't want to put a target on these programs, is I think what we were considering. So I'm not sure the best way to address that, but if anyone has ideas or thoughts on the best way to present it, it would be helpful. I saw a hand go up and then go away, and I can't tell. Okay.
It's me. It's Michaela. I'm so used to using Teams that I instinctually go to the raise hand function now that it's in this format. So I'm sorry. You asked that. Does anybody have a response to that? And I'll just say I remain like a little concerned about distracting people when you start putting out numbers about amount of money that's dedicated towards these programs. When people see the numbers, they're going to be like, but that's a lot of money. And part of what people don't realize is that development costs have gone up at an extremely high and fast rate over the past many years. And it's expensive. It's expensive to build market rate buildings. It's expensive to build affordable housing buildings. And sometimes those numbers can distract people from the real policy issue, which is not that we're spending too much to build an affordable unit, but that we're not spending enough overall to actually make sure everybody in Seattle has an affordable place they can call home. And so I'm willing to entertain a draft on numbers, but I remain nervous about it. But I really hear Cecilia in terms of if that's what activates people, I'm willing to experiment with it.
And I'll just note, I put the numbers in the chat. So the 6% is around $367 million out of a $6.1 billion budget.
I don't get comments for some reason.
Yeah, I have the same problem. You have to put something in the chat and then it like shows up. It doesn't like load. I think the new version of Teams, some folks are having issues. So I will read out loud some of the comments. So Matt Hutchins put in, I am pro including a link to how the numbers were calculated, but not making a meal of it here. Olivia read out loud the comment of what the 6% meant. And then Dylan, is your comment about this, or did you want to get added into the queue? Dylan G.
I had a comment on what Cecilia had pointed out, and
Okay.
it's not about the pie chart, so I can table it until we
Okay.
kind of get through this.
Great.
So can I respond to Matt's comment? I like it. And rather than actually source it, I mean, as long as we have a footnote where the references are, right? Or somewhere where at least says, you know, item, X item, Y item, like what are the items that constitute the 6%? And then they go to the budget book and then they do their own math. I think that would be fine. I think I just want to make sure that whatever was assuming 6% could be a replicable metric by others if they went to do their own math or decided like, oh, they missed this one thing that I would have considered part of that, right? And, you know, I'm thinking about council members, aides that might go and try to do this math on their own, right? And so just think that would be helpful, just to say 6% includes X, Y, Z, and even if it's verbose, they can be like a mini section in the references section or something.
So
That's, I think, how.
It sounds like we can just update this label comment then here and make it a little more specific. Okay.
Yeah, and not to put it like next to it, because then it like, you know, the caption is great and the label is great, and it's more the, you know, methodology of it includes X somewhere where like no one's going to read it, and if they are, they can, right?
Yeah. So we can make it added to the references footnotes at the end. Okay. Yeah. I want to move us along because some folks have been in the queue for a while. So move to Andy and then back to Dylan G.
Yeah, hi. This is well done. Can you go to the first sentence in the first paragraph?
Yes.
Okay. It's a little bit of formatting, but who this is addressed to, and I think there was a cover note from Vanessa saying the general public, and there really is no such thing as general public. There are specific audiences of young, old, politically active, whatever. And when it starts out with encourages you, there's a total ambiguity there. So maybe a header that says from Seattle Planning Commission and to whatever audiences you're really trying to reach. But otherwise, that first sentence I choked on immediately as just being incredibly ambiguous.
Thoughts from others on formatting that? Just to paint a picture for everyone, because I know it's hard when it's a Word document. I am planning to pour all of this into like InDesign and do layout a little bit fancier to the, you know, within the limits of my graphic design skills, which are limited, I'll admit. But, you know, trying to make it look a bit more like a polished piece. And so just with that in mind, how do folks feel about it being almost memo or letter style to folks to address Andy's comment? Or how would folks want to roll that in if we take that approach?
Well, who are you addressing it to? That's what I can't tell.
Yeah, I think we discussed the audience is folks who are interested in outcomes of the comprehensive plan, who are interested in addressing Seattle's affordable housing crisis, but don't typically get involved in the budget process or don't really notice or think about how this budget process that happens every year directly impacts those longer term outcomes. So that's who we're trying to reach. It's not necessarily specific to students or to, you know, homeowners. It's a bit broader than that, but those are the folks who don't always get involved in the budget. That's who we're trying to reach.
Maybe a way of saying exactly what you said, the people you're trying to reach, and make that clearer.
Rose, I know your initial comments were around formatting and audience. Yeah. Maybe do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so I actually think we should try to leave this as broad and accessible as possible and not specify audience. If anything, when we originally formulated this, the idea is it would be almost like a brochure or a handout to capture the attention of people who normally either feel like they can't have a voice or that they don't know how. And so one of my first comments is actually to simplify that first sentence and remove as many words as possible from it to emphasize get involved and voice your support for essential programs that make our city livable, and then use the rest and combinations of graphics to like indicate when the process starts and ends and to highlight our areas of interest. So I actually think that we want to stay away from a tech memo type format and from specifying audience, and instead trying to make this as easy to read and as attention grabbing as possible.
Thanks, Rose. Anyone else on? We've got some plus ones from Zio and Matt. Broad audience, trying to make it engaging. Anyone else have comments on formatting or audience here? I'm trying to group things by like topic so we can all stay together here. Is that helpful enough for you, Olivia?
Yeah, I think so. If folks feel resolved on that, I can always listen back to the recording to hear Rose's specifics. Or maybe email her. Confused.
I got it.
All right, I will move back to Dylan G.
Yeah, I think that Cecilia made a comment regarding the budget and the budget gap. And I was just looking through the first paragraph, and I didn't see it clearly laid out that there is a budget gap, and that is one of the reasons that we're really pushing this letter out. And so wondering if we should be a little bit more clear in the kind of intro, just to mention that that fact. Did I miss it?
No, I was just showing folks the text that Cecilia noted lower down that she said was powerful. So yeah, I think the discussion now is there a way to move that up or work something similar into the very beginning? Yeah, to make it more obvious at the start.
Yeah, because that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dylan.
I was just going to say that the last sentence in that intro, the city cannot slow down on investments. I think there's probably a way to add a couple words there just to clarify that the reason they would slow down is because of this gap. And so just making that point known that there is a real risk here because of a budget gap. And that's why they're going to, I think maybe just being really clear and making that point, I think is worthwhile.
Okay. So you think maybe just this sentence here towards the bottom of the first page, adding something there, or this little paragraph?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I was gonna say that you can that the city is facing a budget deficit and is needing to make some to balance the budget, and putting that like up front. This is why it's more critical than ever to ensure funding for housing and anti-displacement stay in place, and like something like that as a line in the first paragraph or two, as like the catch-all of like why you should read the rest of this. Michaela, is your comment also on this? Okay. All right. I'm going to say mine in the queue then. I was just wondering, Olivia, if you had thought through like title yet, or if we're going to do that later.
Happy for input on title. We have struggled so much with what to call this document. I think staff, we call it like all different things every time we say something about it. So yes, thoughts on title are welcome now.
I feel like we need to be specific in the title about this addressing, why investments in affordable housing and anti-displacement are critical to Seattle's long-term vision. Because in the current title, I don't even know if that's a title or a subtitle. It might just be a heading. It's not clear to me that we are focusing just on the housing kind of issue, because otherwise it looks like we're just talking about the city's annual budget process as a whole. And we're really trying to narrow in on these particular pieces of it. So If we can put that in the title, I think that's helpful. Michaela has a suggestion of invest in Seattle's future. I think it's got to be even more like that. Could maybe be the main title, and then there's a subtitle. We got to put housing, something specific, because that could be like sustainable infrastructure. Anyone have brilliant ideas? Ooh, Nick's got one. Protecting and investing in Seattle's future. Michaela, invest in affordable and equitable Seattle. Matt Hutchins says investing now. Gianna likes what I said. Woo! Does that give you enough to work with, Olivia? I'm sure you'll come up with something really creative.
That might be more confidence in me than I deserve, but I think, yeah, I think these are some good ideas. And I can try to run with some of these from the queue.
I would say,
if I may, can I add just really quickly, Jamie? I really like what you said, almost like as the subtitle, you know, kind of how we have like big header, little header.
Yeah.
And little header is like, why should we invest in Seattle? Like what you said, like literally write it in the chat for Olivia, because it should be framed around like, that's what this paper is about, is why we should do it now, not later. And that it should be an affordable housing.
Yeah. You might have to watch the recording, Olivia, to get what I said, because I remembered off the top of my head.
Okay, I do that a lot. I know we're all like often stream of consciousness here. So.
There's some other great ones in here. Zio says, tell your council member, invest in affordable and equitable Seattle. Rose, make Seattle livable, invest now. So it sounds like you've got a lot of fodder. If anyone else has ideas as we go through, feel free to drop them in the chat for Olivia to sort through. So if something sparks an idea later, feel free to just drop it in. With that, I want to move to Michaela, who is next in the queue.
Okay, I have a couple comments while we're on this little part of the document. Do you think that an average reader reading this will know what a comprehensive plan is or what long-range planning efforts are? I'm always kind of like, I know what a comp plan is, but we might want to, in like the parentheses next to it, do a little layperson explanation of what a comp plan is and why it matters.
I'm seeing Cecilia nod. Yes, people will know.
They will know. Okay. Okay.
My thought to that is also I would be happy to link to something, but am leery to add any more explanation in the heading since we've already had things we want to bring up.
Okay. Top. And then the next one is the graphic of homes needed on the page 2 at the top.
Again, not sure why it's so blurry here. Sorry about that. It won't be blurry.
It won't be. Yes, that was not going to be my comment. So I would suggest putting a source here. And then this comes from the Seattle's housing needs that they were allocated through the countywide planning policies. So within the 0 to 30% AMI category, we would consider that to be affordable housing as well. It's just a different type of affordable housing. And the way the housing needs break it out is there's 2 different types of needs. Seattle was allocated a certain number of units they need to plan for that need to be permanent supportive housing. They also need to be planning for and providing capacity for just homes that will be affordable at 0 to 30. So those would be kind of affordable housing that gets down to rents that are that low, but don't have those other kind of long-term service supports within the building. So that label probably needs to be adjusted to reflect that there's 2 different types of needs there. And then the green label probably needs to use a different type of description because the blue is also affordable housing. And then the cutoff is 80%. And so if you go down to the caption, I don't actually think that this graph is doing a great job of showing that 60% of the units need to be affordable to households making below the area median income, because households making below the area median income are those at 100% or below. And this is grouping everything above 80% of AMI as gray. And so you might just want to go with a statistic of how many of those homes need to be affordable at or below 80% of AMI. And I was also just sort of wondering why in the housing needs, there are 4 different kinds of housing needs below 80% of AMI, and here we're just showing 2. And you may just go with the labels that we use in the housing needs, which are, 2 types of 0 to 30, then a 30 to 50 and a 50 to 80% of AMI. And I promised to send you an email, but that is kind of like a long way to, it's a long email to write. So I figured I'd just say it out loud, and I'd be happy to follow up with an email to clarify.
Sounds like Michaela can be your go-to person with Zio to figure out this graphic.
Yeah, like I'm happy to copy edit some revised graphics or something like that.
I saw Zio came off mute.
Oh yeah, I was just going to offer that this was based off of the Office of Housing presentation, which I think in their presentation they separated out 80 to 100% as served by private market housing production, and then everything 80% and below,
which is true, yeah.
Affordable housing, and then they further distinguish 0 to 30 permanent supportive housing units. So yeah, I think some copy editing to help clarify both the graphic and maybe also the caption, just to get those in tune.
Great. Okay. Any other? Thank you all for tolerating my extra chats in the chat, so it pops up on my screen. I don't believe we have anyone else in the queue. I did just drop a quick comment, maybe adding the word new in the 112 units by 2024 at the bottom right corner, just to make it really clear at first glance. But it sounds like there's some work that will happen between Michaela and Zio and Olivia to kind of just refine this graphic a little more. Any last, I'm going to wrap us up. Thanks, Michaela. Let's get technical in the wording. That's fine. You all will figure it out. I trust you. Deanna, you had 2 dots in the chat. Is that you trying to get in?
The 2 dots is how that I could see that what's going on in the chat.
Okay. Maybe that should be our go-to. Our go-to is a couple dots means you're just trying to refresh your chat. All right. I think Olivia, I believe that's everyone's comments. Please let us know if there's anything else that you need from us, or if that you feel like you have what you need from the responses.
I think I'm good for now based on what was brought up. I think, yeah, there may be a couple people I'd specifically follow up on, like Zio and Michaela, maybe Rose on those thoughts if I can't get it from the recording. But I think, yeah, I think this is all great feedback. So thank you. Thank you all for all your work on this. It's very iterative. So thanks all for staying with us as we went through the many iterations of this paper. But I think we've gotten it to a much better place than it was originally.
I would say a huge shout out to Olivia and Zio for the initial drafts that went to Housing and Neighborhoods, and then also just everyone on Housing and Neighborhoods that went through several iterations of what direction we should take this. And we got there though, so appreciate you all, and thank you all for providing comments on that. Okay. We are on to our last piece, and then I think we're going to be able to end early today and enjoy a little bit of the last of our summer sunshine. So Vanessa, do we have any public comment?
I'm just looking around the room. No, we do not have any additional public comment, just the one that was read at the top of the meeting. Okay. And nobody is here in the room.
Great. All right. Well, then just a reminder of our upcoming meetings. I am hoping if you're interested in planning any future social hours, we tend to try to do them after our afternoon meeting, commission meetings with advance notice, of course, but just as a heads up. And we'll get to all connect with you all soon for some just getting to know people better. And welcome to all our new commissioners. We're super excited to have you on board. And with that, I'm going to adjourn us early.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks all. Thanks, y'all.